Well, if it's all right, then I would like to call this meeting to order. Why don't we start by doing a roll call of who's here? If you could just say your name and if you're present. Sorry, this is my first meeting chairing from the start. I remember at the last meeting we did a roll call, so should we do that again this meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Again, if you could just say your name and if you're an arts commission member.
We'll make it easy. We'll make it easy. Timma Carlson.
Present.
Thank you.
Selena Jones.
Here.
Mary Andrus.
Present.
Tammy Jo Wilson.
Here.
Joe Clayton.
Here.
Clanton. I think that's everyone who is a member of the commission.
I'm
We have a
Olivia.
quorum.
Thank you. Thank you. So if we could start with the adoption of the agenda for tonight. Has everyone had a chance to review the Arts Commission agenda for this evening?
Mm-hmm.
There are two items, Madam Chair. If I may, Madam Chair, there are two items that really should be on the agenda we discussed, but were inadvertently left off. The Oregon's Constitution with regard to freedom of speech was scheduled to be on this agenda because the commission, the Arts Commission is going to have to keep that in mind. Oregon's freedom of speech laws, because they're very different, actually a bit more stringent than the U.S. Freedom of speech. So we have Carrie Richard Ryder here with us, and so we should add that on the agenda. And if with the commission's also with the commission's indulgence, we should also add on goals and objectives of a discussion of that amongst the members of the Arts Commission. So if we could have, with the committee's indulgence, if we could have a discussion on the freedom of speech item first, and then a discussion of finances and financial procedures second. So those two individuals can, when they finish, they could actually excuse themselves for the rest of their evening. And then we can go into a discussion of the Arts Commission bylaws from there. Would that be?
That would be great. Thanks. So there was one item, everything that you mentioned in there is in the agenda, except for we did not add goals and objectives. So we will add that to the agenda item.
Right.
So we do have a motion for an added item to the agenda to discuss goals and objectives, and a reordering of the agenda to start with discussion of freedom of speech Oregon law, and then discussion of finances, financial procedures. And then number 3 will be Arts Commission bylaws, staff report and discussion, and then discussion of goals and objectives, and then adjournment. So that's our amended agenda. Can I get a motion to accept that agenda?
I second to accept the amendment.
Okay, I guess you can I make a motion to, yeah, I can do that. Okay, and you second it.
A motion should be made by one of the commission members.
Right.
I'll motion to accept the new agenda.
Motion made by Tammy Jo Wilson.
I second.
Second by Timma Carlson. So you have those, you have a motion and you have a second.
Yeah, thank you. So all in favor? Just
Say aye.
by your
Aye.
silent consent. If you don't object, raise your hand or all in favor. It looks like the motion passes. Any objections? No objections. Okay, great. All right, well, let's get started then. And I do want to apologize that we are meeting this week. We did meet after the last meeting to schedule the next meeting, and by the time we realized it was too late to do the 7-day notice. So beginning in December, we will be meeting on the third Tuesday of every month. So my apologies for missing that, but it was such a short turnaround. And anyways, so let's go ahead and get right into it with discussion of freedom of speech, Oregon law issues.
Thank you,
Actually,
Chair.
Emma, before we go to that, your email said we'd be meeting on Thursdays, not Tuesdays.
My email?
Yeah, the arts, it came on November 15th. In December, we will go back to third Thursdays for our meetings. Is that not
Okay, that was,
accurate?
okay, I didn't send that, but that was a mistake. At least at the last meeting, the Arts Commission voted to meet on the third Tuesdays of the month. So that is what it should say for December. And we'll talk with staff at the next time we check in, just to make sure that that's correct.
Is that going to work for everybody? The third Tuesday?
I actually have classes on that evening, so if I can be absent once a month, that's fine. But I know in my original readings of the rules, you had a certain amount of absences would remove you from the group, so that might be problematic for me.
Okay, why don't we talk about this at the end of the meeting? Because we did agree at the last meeting to meet on the third Tuesdays, and everybody had a chance to be consulted about that. I'll be happy to have a discussion about that at the end of the meeting. And also the bylaws don't say that you get kicked out if you miss 3 meetings. It's up to the Arts Commission, whether or not. So we'll talk about that and work that out at the end of the meeting. Thank you. So if we can please, discussion of freedom of speech.
Thank you, Chair Lugo. Can you hear me okay?
Mhm.
Great. My name is Carrie Richter. I am the Deputy City Attorney for the City of Oregon City. And I'm really thrilled to be here with all of you. And congratulations on your reconstitution and revisiting all of your established work. And I know you all are going to be reviewing mural proposals as part of your charge, and also maintaining the city's inventory of public art. So those are both really important charges, and I'm thrilled to be working with you. I was asked to provide a little bit of background about free expression rules, laws. As James mentioned, the U.S. Constitution, as you know, has the First Amendment, which prohibits local governments from regulating or abridging the freedom of speech. And there is a long and elaborate history about how and when local governments can restrict free speech. And the matrix has to do with the type of speech at issue. So, for example, commercial speech under the U.S. Constitution is not as protected as, say, political speech, right? So, courts look at the type of speech differently, right? And so local governments can regulate in different ways depending on the type of speech at issue. And that's the way it is in all the states except for Oregon. And Oregon has a much more expansive protection of expression. And that is because of Article 1, Section 8 of the Oregon Constitution. And it provides that local governments cannot restrain the free expression of opinion. And that free expression exists for the whole gamut of types of speech. It exists for, there's a famous case called Nissa, where the Supreme Court had to consider was the nude dance in strip clubs, nude dancing had to be 4 feet away from the customer. And in this case, the dancer was closer to the customer than 4 feet, and Nissa brought a municipal violation, charged this dancer and this club a fine for violating that 4-foot separation. And what the Oregon Supreme Court said was that the ability for expression, it exists across the gamut. There is no historical exception for obscenity. There's no historical exception for profanity. There's no historical exception for blasphemy. So what the court says is there would be kinds of expression that a majority of citizens in many communities would dislike, but that the Oregon Constitution protects it. And so that is sort of the starting point for the city in evaluating proposals for art, because they are expression. The other thing that is unique, I think, about the Oregon Constitution is that in other states, when we talked about commercial distinctions of speech versus political versus government speech, local governments can regulate commercial speech fairly strictly. But in Oregon, the rule is if you have to read the sign or look at the content to know whether the regulations apply, then you are not regulating in a content neutral way. And so let me give you some examples of that. So if we have a regulation allowing commercial speech, but not allowing non-commercial speech, so you can have a sign, you can't have a commercial speech sign, but you can have, a buy Joe's junk sign, right? You can have commercial speech, but you cannot have a reuse Joe's junk sign. In that case, you have to read what the sign is selling or what the sign says, or know something about the sign content in order to know if it is allowed or not allowed. And that type of inquiry may come up in the work you all are doing. In other words, it could be art related to pro Donald Trump, pro Joe Biden, pro, save the whales, pro-life. If you have to look at the content of the sign or the mural to tell if it's allowed, that is a content inquiry that is not allowed under the Oregon Constitution. And so it's very difficult sometimes to separate those two things. And in my experience with sign regulation, this comes up in sort of this question of that we used to regulate signs by saying that you could have on-site signs. In other words, if you were advertising the business that was occurring there, then the sign was allowed. But if it was an off-site sign, in other words, it was advertising something that was occurring off-site, then the sign was not allowed. And many local governments said, well, we're not regulating the content of the speech. We're regulating whether it is on-site or off-site as a way to regulate billboards, right? That was the way you took care of billboards, was you said you only allowed on-site signs, because a billboard is never going to unless it's advertising the business underneath it. You're going to be able to cut out a lot of billboards. And what the Oregon Supreme Court has said, again, if you have to look at the content of the sign to know if it is on premise or off premise, You have to know if they're selling, if the sign is selling Joe's junk or if it's Save the Whales. You are making a content inquiry. And so when we have come up with the mural code, we have been very careful to be very specific about regulation in terms of materials, in terms of size and location on a building, the types of buildings where it's allowed, the type, like I said, the types of materials, the types of paint, the types of, I think there's terracotta authorized and tile. Those sorts of things are no 3D sort of sculpture-ish murals. Those types of things are content neutral because we don't have to read the sign to know whether it's allowed. But anything that goes to, does it matter what the color is, what the style is, all of those things would cross the line with respect to the Oregon Constitution's free speech protections. So the point here is we want to stay away from content, and you all are artists, so you all probably know all this, and I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but I'd be happy to answer any questions or any thoughts you might have about any of this.
So yeah, if you could please just raise your hand or just throw it out there. If there's too many questions, we'll do raise your hand.
Tammy Jo Wilson.
Thank you. I hear the word sign being used a lot. And to me, there is a big difference between a sign and a work of art. And I know a work of art has its own protections and its own laws. So I'm curious what your research, perception, knowledge of protections and rules regarding artwork specifically, as opposed to a billboard would be.
From the city's view of regulation, if we're reviewing art, reviewing a mural, the regulations are the same. We cannot regulate or legislate the content of the art.
So Carrie, are you available for consultation as we begin to approach the topic of murals as a commission? Can we reach out to you for clarification, for advice?
I hope you would. Ordinarily, the way our office usually works is that you would reach out to city staff, to James, and he would circle me in and invite me to attend a meeting or follow up with you directly. So that's ordinarily the way it would work.
Thanks. So my understanding of free speech issues around signs, when you're talking about content, has to do with, like, okay, for instance, here's one. What if somebody wants to do a mural with a pride flag on it? Is that considered free speech that's, you can include that? Or is that problematic? Because to me, that's like when I'm thinking about free speech issues, I'm thinking about things like that. But you're talking more about materials and whether it's considered to be content inclusive or not.
So the city cannot prohibit a mural with a pride flag on it, or it cannot prohibit a mural with a whale on it. It cannot prohibit a mural with a gun on it. That's my whole point, is we cannot inquire about the content. We have to, if the mural has the materials and has the size and has the all of the composition elements required by our mural code, we have to allow it.
That is all part of the code.
And yeah. So is this something that we need to know when we're selecting murals, that we can't make decisions based on that particular element of content? How does a mural committee choose what murals to accept?
I think that that's going to be a difficult. It's going to be difficult, and that's why I think you're going to have to call on our office and work with James to. Is the expectation that you're going to have multiple submissions for a singular facade?
I think we haven't even had that conversation yet. So, I mean,
would
I know
say
that there's
yes.
some people. Yes, go ahead.
That would
Therese.
be normal practice in the art world to have multiple submissions for one project. Normally, you would come up with a proposal, an idea of, we want a mural. It's going to be in this location. It's going to be about this scope of idea, something usually relevant to the location or the community. So there's a structure around the proposal, and then artists, dozens, maybe hundreds, will submit. And their proposals will be related to what we are specifically requesting.
Madam
Thank you,
Chair,
Tammy. I
Madam
noticed
Chair-
that Therese had her hand up also.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
exactly.
it's kind of a follow-up question to Tammy Jo's about the sign and the mural. My understanding is that the mural code, the new one, it was proposed and accepted outside of the sign. And that was the reason for it, was that they had placed the mural code under the sign, and the restrictions on it ended up being that we were no longer allowed. So just to say, my understanding is that the mural code and the allowance of murals is separate from the sign code. And the other thing that I would like to really stress at this meeting is that there is a lot of safeguards that have been set up all along the way from the very beginning of bringing murals back into Oregon City, that people that are submitting murals, they have to submit them to the neighboring neighborhoods, people that will be seeing it. That has to go through an approval process. And correct me if I'm wrong, but these were things that were talked about, and that it had to be on display. And that in itself, that someone would be entering something or applying for something that was offensive to anybody, that in itself would start to restrict it. So I understand, and I know that when you come right down to the legal decision on content, that is not allowed. But there are so many safeguards in place and that we can put on place that we can be comfortable with that. I don't know, and I'm sure that maybe Carrie knows this, but I don't know how many times other cities have ended up in lawsuits for the content they've put up, because in the process itself of an approving a mural can be safeguarded enough so that we can be more comfortable with what it, like Tammy Jo said, you can have 3 or 4 and that can be selected, that can be approved. And it's not on content, but it's on what, you know, whatever that might be for that vicinity. So I kind of just want to put it out there that yes, we should be concerned about the legal part, and we should be concerned about lawsuits, and we should be concerned about but we should also be open to the idea that we can safeguard this, that there are ways to safeguard this so we can move forward.
Thank you. So in the interest of time, I'm going to take Mary's question. Then after that, I'm going to ask if it's possible that we might move on. Mary?
Yeah, I was just curious. I have my other window open and I was trying to read through the Constitution and find the actual line numbers, but I couldn't find it. And I was wondering if you could direct me to where
In the Oregon Constitution, it's Article 1, Section 8.
I see that, but is there something specific to murals that I should be looking at?
No, it's not specific to murals. It's a free speech clause. No law shall be passed restraining the free expression of opinion or restricting the right to speak, write, or print fully on any subject, whatever. Do you see that?
Yes, I do see that. Thank you.
So really quickly, I'm happy for you all to move on. I understand. I think Commissioner Andrews' points were really well taken, that there are safeguards and there are ways that you're going to eke this out. And, you know, these lawsuits don't come up very often. You're right. But when they do, they're horrible. And so I just want to sort of start you with sort of the basics parameters. It is true the murals are excluded from the sign code, but the same protections apply to murals that apply to free expression with respect to signs. So thank you for indulging me, and please use our office through James at your disposal. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Enjoy your Thanksgiving.
Thank you very much. I'm sure this is a topic we will be coming back to quite often. This is only our second meeting as an Arts Commission, so we haven't established protocols for a lot of topics that I know we're going to want to get into, but it's really great to be informed about this right away. And it sounds like several of our fellow Arts Commissioners have experience with this topic. Thank you. If we could move on then, our next discussion is around issues of finances. And I'm not sure who's presenting on that.
Matt Zook.
Oh, Matt, of course.
Good evening. My name is Matt Zook. I'm the finance director for the city. I'm slightly newer than, or slightly older than all of you as far as involvement with the city. I've been here a year, so, and you guys are brand new. Although I've seen some of your faces before. So James asked me to come and share a little bit about just how the financial piece of this works. I will say that the Arts Commission actually is an interesting entity in that you do have some funds available to you. And I think James has already discussed that. It was a part of the city commission goal to put some funds towards the Art Commission. And so James, if you haven't shared, I believe that there's 20,000 per year. We have a 2-year budget. And so as Emma experienced, Emma's been on the budget committee. We set a 2-year budget rather than a 1-year budget. So that appropriation, we call it appropriation. It's a authorization to spend, is available for you at any point during the 2 years, which runs from July to June, July of 2021 to June of 2023. So the Arts Commission actually has some rules. Emma, you mentioned the bylaws for the Arts Commission. I did a little bit of research on the municipal code, and it describes some of the powers of the Arts Commission, which, as it pertains to finances, allows you to both raise funds and disperse funds. So I think the key thing here is that by virtue of being a commission under the umbrella of the city provides a lot for you, i.e. the financial infrastructure. We'll pay the bills, we'll help you raise the money, help you receive the money. But kind of similar to what Carrie indicated, that James would be your go-to guy as the liaison to that, to both get the financial advice. I'm free. He can invite me anytime to help answer any questions, but I would be advising James. So as it pertains to raising money, specifically the Arts Commission has the authority and power to solicit funds or grants from individuals, corporations, or other government agencies. So as you get creative and get this engine rolling, we would be the fiscal agent for receiving those funds. So if you just, you're out there finding opportunities for grants for specific purposes, et cetera, bring that back to the commission. And as a body, the key thing here, I think, is you act as a body. And so as a body, you would decide, hey, we want to pursue this grant. We want to pursue this fundraiser. We want to, solicit donations. And as a body, once you make that decision, then we would go and execute that on behalf of the commission. So we could go out and we would be the fiscal agent to sign off on the request for the grant, which doesn't mean that we do it all. You are the experts in your field. And so I think partnering with us to help write grants or, solicited donations, who your target audience is, et cetera, that comes hand in glove with the Arts Commission. We'll partner with you on that. But as it pertains to, say, receiving those funds, you don't have to worry about, and in fact, we prefer that you don't accept donations, don't accept cash and transfer it to the city. Just as you get out and start doing this activity, we'll provide the communications for you to say, hey, the Arts Commission is receiving donations, or you want to focus on a certain time frame, serve a certain purpose. We can put that communication out and then receive those funds. The nice thing is that we'll track that for you as well. And so recognizing that you will want to spend some money over time, you again go through the process of having a meeting to authorize an expense or a direction for spending money. And under that unified body decision, then James would execute the request for disbursement. There is some language in the municipal code unique to the Arts Commission that just basically says any dispersal of funds may occur only with the concurrence of the city manager. And primarily, the purpose of that is that we are the experts in the laws that we have to abide by, which include procurement and local budget law. In this case, I don't anticipate the Arts Commission having any speed bumps or any issues. We're talking relatively small dollars in the scope of things to begin with. I know you'll become a multi-million-dollar operation at some point, but right now we're starting with $40,000, and that doesn't kick a lot of thresholds for checks and balances. But if there was a discrepancy or some sort of issue, actually the city commission, by virtue of being the governing body, they would resolve any disputes. So as it pertains to like actually going out and purchasing items, the key thing I think is you act as a body. No one individual person can go out and just buy something and submit the receipt. It's we'll handle accessing the attorney, bringing them on board. If you guys need professional services, not necessarily office supplies, but consultants, you want to actually engage in materials and services, we'll do that for you. So I think that's probably the overview of what I wanted to at least bring to you. I recognize not everybody's familiar with how government works, and it's slightly different than just your average finance where you can just go buy what you want. But it's fairly easy in this case, I think, for you guys to move about.
Think are there questions? Trieste.
Yeah, I wonder if you could go into some specifics, Matt. Many of us here have applied for grants, so there is lots of information that's required. What's your EIN number, your address, like so many specifics. So can the Art Commission as a whole apply for a grant, for either an event or just for funds to do something with? And how would we go about doing that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Yes, you can. And that's part of your charter. Part of your purpose is to go out and ensure that we get some funds to, generate the arts activity here in the city. The technicalities of actually, the information and all the boring details, we can certainly handle. I think that we'll have to sign off on the grant as well, because we have the authority to receive the grant, and we're the government entity that will often, be necessary to receive it. I think where the Arts Commission comes in is really, writing the grant because of the content and the things that need to be demonstrated as a need for receiving the grant. That's your expertise. I envision that, if you have a grant you want to pursue and you agree as a body to go ahead and pursue that grant, then in working with James, you guys can have the discussion as to who writes the grant. and who provides the content. I see our role really as we've got the EIN. It's public anyways, but we'll provide the EIN, the address, the contact information, the phone numbers, and partner with the Arts Commission in that way. So does that make
Okay,
sense? Or do you have a
Well,
more
so
specific?
what you're saying is we would get in touch with you for the, like, the information, the address and the EI number and everything. You would supply us with that. But then we as a group, if we agreed upon it, would write the grant. But we would work with you as partners to get the information, because of course we're brand new. We don't have any of that information yet.
Yeah. And I think, actually we'll have to, we can very easily submit it. We'll have to keep the records on that as well, because that's a public document. So we'll work with you on getting it submitted.
Great.
Thank
And then
you.
I'm going to ask this really
Um,
quickly, because I know there's other people that have questions, but the other part of it is, so say we had a fundraising event, a gala, an art gala, a dinner under the stars, something to raise funds for the art. How would we work with you on that?
Well, that's a great question. At that time, as there was a specific event, I think what we would be talking about, the mechanics of that would be, how do we want to receive those funds at the event? Do we want to set up some electronic means to receive funds? Do we want to, receive those at an event in person? I see myself as being available to, attend at an event and help with the physical aspect of that and provide that resource. I would work, I'm not planning on attending all your commission meetings, but working with James to work out, the details and do all the back end work, and then communicate that back through James, or attend your meeting if necessary.
Okay, so we just work with you along when they're a wonderful partner. Nice to meet you, Matt.
Nice
Thank
to meet
you for
you.
all your help.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you.
Tammy Jo, go.
Thank you. When I'm addressing fellow commissioners, would you like me to refer to you as like Commissioner Wilson, or just calling you by your first name?
First name is
What would you
fine for
prefer?
me.
I see. Okay, that works for me too.
I
Okay,
prefer
Tammy?
your honor, but that doesn't, you didn't ask me.
Oh, okay, so my question is really just to summarize and make sure that I understand correctly. So when applying for a grant, you create an online profile that usually requires an email account, and then that person or entity or organization attached to a specific email and address then submits the application. So what I'm hearing is we could provide you with all of the content, but then your office would actually create the online profile with the email, because that's where they're going to come back and say, yes, you got awarded, here's your money. Does that sound correct? So the actual submitting, the hitting the button on the web computer would come from you guys, and we would just give you the content and then you would plug it in. Does that sound right?
Yeah. And I want to make sure I'm not setting up Ann and James for more work than they're anticipating. But the real benefit of that is we provide all the coverage and the content and the legality and the identity for you, so that you don't have to go out and act independently, which could create an issue down the road. I mean, you're not a foundation, you're not a separate legal entity. And so by us doing that, we provide that protection. But definitely the content and the involvement, I mean, it's hand in glove with you guys. So, I mean, if there's even an opportunity for a second, email, so that there's multiple people, we just need to be involved from the identity and the legality standpoint, so that it'll make it more supportable for the donor as well, or the grantee or the grantor. So,
sounds good to me. I'll let you do it.
Okay. You don't even have to have a treasurer or secretary. We got it all. We're full service. I think Tima had a question.
Yeah, Tima, please.
So my question was that these procedures financially should be added to our bylaws, I would recommend.
Thank you. So when we get to our bylaws discussion, will you remember to bring that up? Thank you.
I sure can.
Matt, there was another question that was from the previous meeting one of our fellow commissioners asked if there was money still in the budget from the 2005 Arts Commission. So I don't know how that works, but that was a question somebody asked.
That's a great question.
And there was an answer to that. It's no money.
Okay,
I would have found it by now. It is no money.
that's the answer.
There is reference to, there was an old fund, the Civic Improvement Fund. And in all transparency, there is not necessarily a separate fund designated for this, but we do track it independently, and we will, we basically use a project accounting for all the things related to Arts Commission. So any funds, that's a good, I'm glad you brought that up, because any funds that you raise that aren't spent in the existing budget will roll forward. They are encumbered as is expressly for the Arts Commission. They won't get commingled with property taxes or general fund or be spent on a park or a police officer or anything like that. It's designated and special just for you guys. We'll handle the counting of that, provide the reporting for you at any given time. In fact, I want to work with James to create a template that he can release to the commission at any given time, whether it's monthly, quarterly, whatever. And you guys can have all that information in front of you.
Thank you, Tammy.
Yeah, this might be a off the wall crazy question, maybe not. Is the Arts Commission allowed to own property? And I don't mean copiers.
Let
Do you know what I'm asking?
Let me address this whole thing. The Arts Commission is an advisory body of the commission. And so therefore, when you cannot own property, you're an advisory body. So therefore, when it comes to raising money, you're raising money actually on behalf of the city. And you would use the tax ID number of the city. And if the commissioners decide they don't want to raise money on behalf of arts, they can do that. So really, it's a hierarchy. It's the Arts Commission. If you decide you want to do some type of special event, and you have a proposal, then it'll be submitted to the staff. The staff would submit it to the commissioners. The commissioners would approve, and then you proceed with the project because you have the blessing of the decision makers of the city. So that's how that works. But you cannot raise money without, you cannot have a special event without the blessing of the commissioners. And
Thank you. I think that makes sense. I just wanted to kind of draw a good understanding of our function as an advisory and where the limits and boundaries of that are. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Matt Zook?
Actually, this was a question for James, just for clarification on that last point. So if art was donated to the Arts Commission city, and say the city were to sell that art later on, would those funds then go back into the arts treasure chest?
Well, that would be a decision on the commissioners.
Okay, it'd still be a commissioner decision. It wouldn't automatically be.
And usually when a grant is, say that the Arts Commission got a grant, I mean, was fortunate to get a grant from some entity. The city commissioners would have to approve receipt of the grant.
And same for the physical artwork, so sculptures or paintings. If those were donated to the city, we used them and then sold them later. Those funds would then, it'd be up to the commission to decide where those funds would be applied in the budget. Okay.
By default, but we would try not. I mean, I would not anticipate commingling them. I think that what James is saying is, it'd be up to the commission. I mean, there may be a time when, like had happened in the past, that the commission dissolves. At that point, then you decide. The city still owns the assets, but if there's fungible cash, generally what happens is the city commission is specific as to what happens to the remainder of the funds and how they're spent. They get explicit about that. Ideally, you hold the purpose of the donation or the funds through the entire life of But again, that defers to the commission. So I just wanted to provide the reassurance that yes, I don't think there's a risk that arts assets would be, quickly sold and used for another purpose. I think that's definitely not the intent of the
Thank
city.
you. Are there any other questions for Matt? Tammy?
I just wanted to, I don't want to linger on this too long, but I think this is an important one. I don't know if any of you guys are aware that Multnomah County actually has its own art collection that is owned by Multnomah County. And it has multiple valuable artwork that is owned by the county. So it's my understanding that obviously the Arts Commission specifically can't own property, but the city of Oregon City could own artwork. Am I correct about that? If the Arts Commission decided to advise the city to have an public arts collection of artworks, I'm thinking more paintings. I'm not talking like murals here. I'm talking about things that could go in city and government public spaces, things like that. So the city could own the artwork with the advisory commission's support. Does that sound right?
That's correct.
Thank you. Yeah, and one of our tasks that I've heard in the last 2 meetings is actually eventually to review the inventory of public art in Oregon City. So, and one of the things I'm sad to report, I'm sure some of you may have heard it or seen it, but the sculpture that was on Malala was on 7th Street was, I guess, hit by a car last week or something. Did anybody catch that one? It looked like the
Which
sculpture was
one?
just destroyed. It was the couple that was embracing. It was that one that was kind of down there. They had moved it down by the 7-Eleven.
That's
it was-
horrible.
Yeah, it was hit by a car and I think it was destroyed. I believe that was owned by the city.
Mhm.
So anyways, thank you, Matt. Are there any other
Welcome.
questions for Matt? All right, thank you very much.
Sure. Have a great evening. Thanks, guys.
So if it's all right, we'll move. Thank you. If it's all right, I think we'll move on to review the bylaws. Has everyone had a chance to receive the bylaws, the proposed bylaws that were sent to the Arts Commission? Did anyone not receive the bylaws? Okay. So we have these bylaws. They were, I think James, can you tell me who wrote those? Because I just got like revised bylaws. I guess somebody wrote them.
It was a joint effort between staff and legal.
Okay, great, thanks. I mean, I thought they were great. I think that as a body, we should, take some sort of concrete action on this. The easiest action would be just to approve them as written. We could also go through the bylaws. It's not too long of a document. I think it's a couple pages long. And if there's anything that people really are concerned about that they want to change or alter, we can have that conversation. Let's start just by having time for comment. Does anyone have any comments on the revised bylaws?
I do have one question to ask the group. The bylaws, what you're looking at is an updated version of the old bylaws. So the question is there any entity in the new bylaws that doesn't exist anymore? Because in the old bylaws, there were entities named that don't exist anymore. So I just want to make sure that we've got the right entities included in the new bylaws that exist, because some of you are actually representing certain types of organizations. So I just want to make sure.
Well, I know that there was reference before to the Clackamas County Arts Alliance. It was under a different name, and I do not see it in our bylaws currently.
And is anyone representing that group, or whether it's? Okay,
I mean, I'm on its board, but I'm not here to represent them.
okay.
James, could you just point out one of the things that I noticed about the new bylaws is that I did not see any specific organizations named in the new bylaws. Did I miss something? Because I did not see any organizations listed in the new bylaws. It's just general things like arts organizations was the language.
In the old bylaw, and correct me if I'm
Right, in the
wrong,
old bylaw.
Ann.
I mean, in the new bylaws. Did you see
Right.
anything in the new bylaws?
Well, there's nothing, I don't see anything in the new bylaws in terms of a organization representation. But
And I do think is intentional. We wanted to have the bylaws not become dated with changes in organizations. And
right.
so I think we wanted to like name types of organizations, but not name any specific organization.
Yeah, I just want to make sure of that. Now, the reason I asked also that question, because specific organizations are named in the code, which is different. And the code itself. And that is the constitution of the city. So at some point, the Arts Commission would have to address making recommendations to the commissioners, the city commissioners, to only represent those entities that exist. Because it's in the code itself, specific organizations, and some of them don't exist. So at a later point, we have to address the code. But right today, we're talking about the bylaws, and the bylaws can be changed at any time because they're your rules of behavior, your own very rules of activity and protocol.
Thank you. So I did make a note of that so that we can bring that up at a future meeting. Thank you for making us aware of that. Is there further discussion on the bylaws? Does anyone have, Tima, please.
I saw that Mary and Trace had it up as well, but I just wanted the addition of the financial procedures as they would be rules for the commissioners to be aware of to be added.
Thank you. So Mary, before we get to you, I just want to ask Tima if you can provide language that we could either adopt tonight or add to the bylaws at the next meeting after the commissioners, our fellow commissioners, have had a chance to review the language, and the city has also had a chance to review the language to make sure that it's something we can put in our bylaws.
Yeah, and I think having Matt Zook involved in it as well is important.
Yeah, we'll work with you on that, Tima.
Thank you. So we'll make sure, I'll add that to the, make sure that we address that at the next meeting if it hasn't been included in the agenda. Mary.
Thank you. My question is a point of clarification. In our last meeting, we talked about a chair and a vice chair, but we didn't, I wasn't sure if we're also identifying a secretary and treasurer, or if we're not going to have those positions filled. Under organization point 4, it talks about a secretary and treasurer, and I just wanted some clarification if that's roles that we need to fill or not.
Those
James, would you like to address that again?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You don't have to have a secretary or treasurer. The bylaws, as well as the code itself, calls out only those specific offices. The code calls out that. It doesn't mention any other offices. When it comes to secretarial duties, you can have a secretary. The secretary doesn't even have to be a member of the commission. But with all the other advisory groups, it's staff that usually keeps the minutes on behalf of the commission and other advisory groups. And if you can elect a secretary if you'd like, but in that capacity, usually the secretary is ceremonial, and they also could have the ability to review, or the capability of reviewing the bylaws, not the bylaws, but the minutes that the staff has come up with just to make sure that they're accurate. So it's up to you as to how you want to handle it, but it's primarily a ceremonial role. And the staff keeps the minutes and submits and could submit it to the secretary just for review. And the secretary could certify that they're correct.
What about the role of treasurer?
The role of treasurer is also absent in the code. It doesn't mention a treasurer because basically the finance department of the city is the treasurer. And so therefore, if you did elect a treasurer, it would be simply ceremonial.
Well, I would think that then the city should be providing a update with every meeting.
Of your expenditures?
Correct.
Sure, of course, yeah. When you have them, you have none, you don't have none, there's no point in it.
I guess, given that information, thank you, James. I wonder if we should omit that point in the bylaws, or do I need to make a motion for that? A suggestion.
Sure. Can you just tell us where that is?
Yeah, it's on page 2,
Uh-huh.
under organization number 3.
Right. Thank you.
Sorry, I made an error. It's actually number 4, not 3. That's where they specifically talk about treasurer and secretary.
So
And you look at the bylaws.
Yeah, the proposed bylaws for review under organization on page 2, number 4.
Right.
So after a member has 3 consecutive absences in a 12-month period without notification to the secretary/treasurer, the commission may remove that member. What would you propose we change that language to, Mary?
Without notification to the chair/vice chair instead of secretary/treasurer.
And is that a legal, can we do that, James?
Yes, you can.
Okay. So we have a motion to change the language to strike secretary/treasurer from bullet point number 4 of the Oregon City Arts Bylaw, page 2. It's under section 4, organization, and replace that secretary/treasurer with the language chair/vice chair. Do we have a motion to accept that change in the language of our bylaws?
I motion
Of
to
our
accept that change.
proposed bylaws. Thank you.
I
Do we have a
second that
second?
motion.
That's a second. Great. Okay. So if you can just make that note of the change, I guess Anna is doing the notes. I'm not sure, maybe James. We have not approved the bylaws yet, so this is an amendment to our proposed bylaws.
Correct. And we have to actually, because of that, you have to actually vote on this issue. So you actually have to vote on this one. So
Thank you. So let's do a call. Let's just do a show of hands. Please raise your hand if you support this change. Okay, and if you don't, please raise your hand if you're opposed to it. And seeing on that, motion is approved. So that will change to chair/vice chair. Is there other discussion about the proposed bylaws before we vote on them? Trieste.
I kind of want to make a comment and put something out there. We had our own bylaws put together for the Three Rivers Artists Guild. People now use our bylaws to say this is not how you put bylaws together. And we've learned a lot through that. And what we've learned specifically is that bylaws should be as general as you possibly can get them. Because otherwise you're restricted from everything you put in that bylaw. You are restricted unless you change the bylaws. And I'm not sure even what all the procedures are here for the Art Commission, but in order to change bylaws for the guilds, they have to be submitted to the general membership for 2 months. Then they have to be voted on, and then they can finally be changed. One of the things that is out there is free legal consultation for any art organization that shows, I think it's less than 500,000 or 100,000. And that's what the Guild is in the middle of, is submitting that to the free legal support in order to do that. So I don't know how people feel about that we make the changes to the bylaws as much as we feel is something we want to move ahead with, but then have somebody, a professional legal, and have a free expense on it to be able to take one last look at it. So that's just a voice of experience, is as general, because you can always attach like a financial procedure, or you can attach a code of conduct, or you can attach a conflict of interest statement. But the bylaws, it takes so much to change those once you form them. So I just wanted to, as a voice of experience, is what you can run into, that you think by making them specific that you're helping, but in the long run makes things very difficult because times change. One of our bylaws is a monthly meeting. Every meeting, we can no longer have those. So anyway, that's just some information from what we've gone through.
Thank you. I see Tammy has her hand up.
Yes, thank you. Did I miss something, or didn't we just change our bylaw? Wasn't it just that easy of there was a proposal, it was seconded, she did language, we voted, and it was changed? So
And maybe that's a
definitely
different
agree,
procedure. It could
Yeah,
be
so-
a different procedure for the Art Commission. And I mean, that was part of our bylaws. Part of our bylaws is, in order to change them, this is what you need to do.
I'm just saying ours
So-
seem to be really easy to change.
Mhm.
I definitely agree with keeping them general, keeping them, open and not limiting ourselves. And I think having someone double check that knows more than we do is great. But it seems like it's pretty straightforward to change our bylaws, unless I missed something. Did I miss anything?
If I could, Madam Chairman, Chair, I
Mhm.
mean, because you're not a separate legal entity, you're an advisory board, it is very easy to change your own bylaws, as opposed to being a standalone 501c3. You're not a standalone 501c3. You're actually part of the city. So as an advisory group, you can change your bylaws at any time to fit how you operate and how you want to operate. And because there's no membership, you are the members. So it's
Sounds
very easy.
good. Sounds good
Thank
to
you.
me.
Josh had his hand up.
So I'm the administrator for 4 nonprofit organizations. It's part of what I do for my day-to-day job. I agree with the statement that we should try and keep the bylaws a little bit more general. I understand that they're easy to change. When we have to change bylaws for my organizations, it typically takes months because we have to get hundreds of companies to sign off on every change. But I would just, my 2 cents is, if we want to put procedures like the financial procedures, which I totally agree we should have listed out somewhere in guidelines versus the bylaws, it just creates a hierarchy of our documentation, everything kind of streaming out of the bylaws into our various procedures and guidelines. So I'm okay either way, but I'm just throwing it out there that typically standard practice is to do that I see.
Thank you. Is there any more discussion on the bylaws?
One other point here, meetings under Article 7, it says that the Arts Commission shall hold an official meeting at least every other month. Is that, and may hold special meetings as needed. Is that how you would like to operate? Are you meeting every month or every other month?
Well, that's a good question. My understanding from the first meeting was that we were going to meet every month, at least for the time being. But that was just my understanding based on what I was hearing. Tammy?
Yeah, I think thank you for looking that up and pointing that out. That is a really good point. That could be confusing for ourselves and for others going forward as our membership changes. Maybe that is something we could consider changing. So it would say something like we're talking about broad regular meetings, or maybe a certain number per year, like we have regular meetings at least 6 times a year or something like that. So let's say something happens, COVID is happening in a really intense way again, it would be nice to be able to fluctuate. Or maybe we have a huge project that comes and we end up having meetings like every 2 weeks, and then we're exhausted and the holidays are coming and we need a break for like 2 or 3 months. It would just give us the flexibility to either be really intense or, if lockdown comes back, who knows what's going to happen in the future, to not be restricted. So I guess right now I'm just suggesting the idea of changing the language to regular meetings as opposed to putting a specific number on it, with possibly the idea, you guys can tell me how you feel about having a number per year so that there is some sort of general understanding of like the frequency, so that it doesn't end up like, oh, we meet twice a year, because I don't think anybody wants that. So that there's still a regularity, but an openness.
Well,
That sounds great.
Well, in terms of bylaws, you have to state whether you're going to meet monthly or bi-monthly or once quarterly. That's how bylaws are focused. Now, if you say, give you a couple options. If you say monthly, and because you are a public body, you have to meet monthly. And when there is not a meeting, that has to be, if for some reason a meeting is not held for a reason, then a notice has to be sent out to the public to let people know that you're not meeting that month. So that's one way of doing it. It's just a matter of keeping track and letting people know. That's one. The other way of doing it is that you could decide to meet it every other month, as it's stated here. And once again, if you have to cancel a meeting, you have to it has to be put out, it has to be agendized and put out as a public notice, I should say, as a public notice saying that you're not meeting that particular month. So so you still have to announce it. If you're not having a meeting for some reason and you're supposed to, you have to put out a notice letting people know that you're not meeting at that time.
Thank you. I saw Josh with his hand up.
Sorry, James answered my question at the end there, so no further question.
Personally, I'd prefer to change the language to monthly. I think we've got a lot to do. And I think that meeting once a month is probably where we're at right now. But I don't know, maybe that seems like too much to some people.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
I think
Teresa.
to put that in the bylaws is going to restrict people in the future. I think like Tammy Jo said, that if we do a minimum, if we put in the bylaws that we have a minimum of once every quarter, but conduct meetings as needed and agreed upon by the commission, that's going to protect people in the future. So I totally agree that we need a monthly meeting. There's so much to discuss, but for the bylaws, make it as general as possible so you don't have to change them in the future.
Okay, so from James' advice, and James is really, the person who knows what we need to do, we should change that from bi-monthly to quarterly.
Yeah, like a minimum and more meetings
Sure.
as agreed upon. And
my understanding based on what James was saying is that that's implied. So
Yes, you could say once a quarter in your bylaws, and you can still have your monthly meetings, but at minimum, as Ms. Andrews said, your regular meetings are conducted on a quarterly, once every quarter, but you can have as many meetings, just as long as the public knows when you're meeting.
Thank you. Tammy?
I think you answered my question. I was just going to ask that if we had to put out any kind of notice, if we were meeting more than what we listed, so that there was a note, like, but it sounds like we only need a notice if we're not meeting, as opposed to if we're meeting more often. So that sounds fine to me.
So
if you're meeting more, whenever you meet, you have to put a notice out. Whenever you meet, and whenever you don't meet, you have to put a notice out.
So let's change the language to quarterly. However it would like to be worded. I think Trist and Tammy both had an idea of how to change that language. Or James, maybe you would have a good suggestion for just how to phrase that.
The Arts Commission shall hold official meetings at least once on a quarterly basis. And the meeting should be held on the third or fourth Tuesday each quarter?
Yeah,
Or Thursday, if we have to sort that one out.
right. We should decide that too.
So we can put them.
Do we need to?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Do we need to say the day, or can we just say the frequency?
You have to say the day, whether it's the fourth or third Thursday or second Tuesday or third Tuesday. You have to say.
Yeah, we do have to say that. We can't
Yeah.
just put in, okay.
Okay, why don't we decide that now then? That was from back at the beginning of the meeting. So at the last meeting, we agreed on the third Tuesdays. What do people want to do now that we're going to put this into our bylaws?
Well, and sorry that I did think that was the case, but we received an email, like I mentioned, sorry, Emma, it was not from you, you're right, it was from Anne, that said the Thursday, every third Thursday. So, and it said our meeting in December, for instance, was on the 16th, I believe. So that changed when I chose my classes. So I'm sorry I got confused there. And now I have Tuesday evening classes at 7:10.
So I see Josh and Tammy both have their hands up.
It might be helpful just to reiterate which days of the month we are not supposed to be meeting on again, because I can't remember all of them. I think first Thursday was the McLaughlin Association, but I think, yeah, the commission and all that, we want to avoid those. So if we know which ones we can't pick, that might help narrow it down for us.
The commissioners, the city commission meets the first and second Wednesday of each month. The city commissioners have a workshop usually on the second Tuesday of each month. Those are that's the decision-making committees. And I think that's probably what you really need to be concerned about.
Yeah, we'd like to meet at a time when staff at least are able to attend. So we don't want to interfere with other staff obligations.
Oh, the Urban Renewal Commission. And the Urban Renewal Commission, I can't forget that one. The Urban Renewal Commission meets the second Tuesday. Well, actually, the Urban Renewal Commission actually meets when it needs to meet. And it usually, in the past, it has met at 6 o'clock, because the commission meeting's at 7. It is generally, it is met actually a lot, but it is met at 5 o'clock on whenever the commission meets, the Urban Renewal Commission meets. That's a general rule. So you're looking at the third and second Wednesday of each month.
Thank you.
So
Why don't we keep it, let's make our choices here not too complicated. Let's talk about the third Tuesday and the third Thursday, because those were kind of at the start of the conversation. What if we kept it narrowed to those two choices? Would that, can we decide on one of those first and then? Like I said, at the Tammy.
Yeah, I think that's kind of
Tammy?
where we're at. Is it going to be the Tuesday or the Thursday? I guess I'm just kind of curious to see where everybody's leaning. I know for me, Tuesday was not my first choice. So if we change it to Thursday, that would be great for me. But I don't know how everybody else feels. I agreed to Tuesday because it seemed to be the best date for the group. So I'm just curious if we could do a general, like, how's people, I have no idea.
So let's just go around and ask everyone what their preference is, or if they have a preference. I'm just gonna go through, I'm gonna start with Trist. What works for you, Tuesday or Thursday?
I'm
Or both?
fine with either one.
Thanks. Tammy, what works for you, Tuesday or Thursday?
Thursday would be my
Both.
preferred date.
Thursday, thank you. Mary, what works for you, Tuesday or Thursday or both?
Thursday, please.
Okay. Selena, what works for you, Tuesday or Thursday or both?
Thursday, please.
Thursday. Okay, it looks like, yeah, Josh?
No preference.
Okay, and I'm either way. So we had several preferences for Thursdays, so we will change the language
hear
in
from
our
Tima.
bylaws to.
Tima,
I am so
I have
sorry,
no,
Tina.
I have no
Oh.
preference either. That's okay.
I'm so sorry. You're on my last screen. I didn't see you. Please forgive me. So that's Thursday. So, okay, great. So if we can change that language to quarterly and the third Thursday.
okay.
Are there any other proposed changes to the bylaws? Or discussion?
Did we have to vote on that change too?
We do have
Since you
to
haven't
vote on
approved the
it.
bylaws, these are
Oh,
simply,
yeah. Right.
These are, you haven't voted on the bylaws, so these are just changes that with these changes, now you can just vote on the bylaws.
Yeah,
Unless there's any, provided there are no other changes. I think there's one other
Right.
change forthcoming, because I think there was some discussion about adding financial procedures, which
Yeah.
we don't have in the bylaws yet. If so, therefore, you can always make a motion to approve the bylaws as amended, with the caveat that there will be more amendments forthcoming.
yeah, I think that's what we should do. Is there any other discussion on the bylaws at this point? No. Okay. Would anybody like to make a motion to approve the amended bylaws?
I motion to approve.
Oh, go ahead.
Thanks. Would anyone like to second that?
I can second the motion.
Who
Great.
made the motion, the first motion? I don't, oh, okay.
Thanks. Great. So all in favor of approving the amended bylaws, please raise your hand. And thank you. Anyone opposed? Great. Well, we've got bylaws done. Yay. All right. Thank you.
And also, just for future reference, since we're using Zoom, when you can also use the Zoom hand, also, like the one that I have here. You can always raise it, and you click it again to lower it, so that way you can see yourselves. It's so you don't always have to raise your hand. It's probably easier to be able to see it from the animation.
Thank you.
does
So we
this
have
mean
10
that-
minutes left in the,
Oh,
sorry,
I
go
was just
ahead.
gonna say, if we're going with the third Thursdays, I mean, December 16th, we're gonna meet in December,
Mhm.
December 16th,
Oh.
okay.
Oh, no, I guess we'll have to decide that now because our bylaws just say quarterly. So if we want to meet on December 16th, then we need to approve that. So
I'm just
would
checking in.
anybody like to meet on December 16th? Selena says yes. Okay, I say yes too. Definitely. So wouldn't
Animation, animation.
Yeah. So would anybody like to make a motion to set a special meeting for December 16th?
I make a motion to have a special meeting on December 16th.
Thank you. Anyone second?
I'll second the motion.
Thanks. So all in favor of next meeting, December 16th, please raise your hand. Great. Okay, excellent. So that's our next meeting.
December 16th.
Yeah. So we have like 7 minutes left in our meeting. The last item on the agenda that we had, oh, there's also one thing that we forgot to do, which was to ask for public comments. My apologies, I'm still learning how to do this as the temporary chair. Were there any public comments?
No, we didn't receive any emails or anything from the public.
Okay. Great, thanks. Okay. So like I said, we have 7 minutes left. Would we like to, oh, Tima, you have your hand up.
Sorry, yeah, I just had a question. How does the city know, or not the city, but the public know? Are they aware that we are having Arts Commission meetings now? I myself have not seen anything on the media.
Well, they're supposed to be distributed through, they're supposed to be distributed in several ways. One, the local newspaper. Also, there is supposed to be on the city's website. And they're supposed to be distributed. There's a group of people that would like to know when city functions happen. And so therefore the minutes should be, or not, the agenda should be sent to all those individuals who have requested to be aware of such meetings. So that's what's supposed to happen.
Thank you.
And if we always post the agenda that goes to the city website and recordings of this session. So the YouTube recording is available on the city website as well. And if you like, I can put a link to that in the minutes so you'll know where to look.
Thank you. So for the last 5 minutes, do we want to discuss, how did you phrase that, James, at the beginning of the meeting, like priorities and something?
Oh, yes. Well, a discussion about goals and objectives of the commission.
Goals and objectives, right?
Goals and
Yeah.
objectives. But if I
Is
may
there-
suggest,
Thank you.
that you probably, this is going to take a lot. I mean, goals and objectives commission takes a lot of time. Really, you
Yeah.
really should.
So maybe move that to the next meeting.
Yeah, we can move to the next meeting, but you really should have a vision for art in the city. There should be a vision statement, and then goals and objectives for the commission, and then you can also have programs that meet those those goals and objectives, and are of course compliant with the vision. So you really need a vision for the Arts Commission, backed up by goals and objectives and programs or initiatives.
Great. Okay, so maybe for our next meeting, we can put that at the start of the meeting, talk about goals and objectives, maybe a vision or a mission statement, and programs. So,
I think someone has a hand.
and in between this meeting and the next meeting, the chair and vice chair will get together with the staff to set the agenda for the next meeting. Are there other agenda items that our fellow commission members would like to have on the next meeting? Okay.
Tammy, do you want to go
Emma?
Well,
first?
thank you. Sorry, I missed you. Yeah, please go ahead. Please,
Going
Tammy.
back to the goals and I forget the other word. Anyway,
Goals and objectives?
objectives. Thank you. I think even in just the brief time we have, could we maybe, I don't know if we want to come up with, if we're going to talk about it, maybe we just have to talk about it the next meeting because we're running out of time, but how are we going to come up with those, the vision and the mission? Like, are we going to do it through a committee? Are we all going to write something and then kind of talk about it? But I think we need to come up with the structure and idea of how we're going to get to the place where we have this vision, whether it's through each of us submitting, just what's the process? I mean, because I could write it, but it's going to be very different than what Selena's going to write or what Mary's going to write. And so how do we come to that?
Recommendation is many times the staff would submit a draft vision, a draft goals and objectives so that you can actually change them. Because the expectation is that when if we do that, we expect you to change it or throw rocks at it. I always expect people to throw rocks at my visions. So that's how it's designed. That's one way of doing it. And the other way of doing it is that there could be a committee of 2 of you, not 3, because that would be breaking public meeting law. A couple of you that could put together a vision statement, some goals and objectives, and then submit it also to the group for discussion. That's another way of doing it instead of the staff doing it. But also keep in mind that because vision statements and goals statements and objectives are very, very involved, because Oregon City, the comprehensive plan, if any of you were involved with the comprehensive plan, you know that was a very involved process. Mm-hmm. And so I would suggest that a meeting for an hour and a half will not really help you very much. You probably need a retreat to do something like that, where you're there for a couple of hours, maybe 3 hours, actually hammering out this kind of thing, taking breaks, of course. But you probably need to set aside time in terms of a retreat to do this.
Okay, thank you. Josh, did you?
Yeah, I guess I was going to ask, was there a vision statement and goals and objectives from the last Arts Commission that we could just take and then start editing off of that? Is that simpler?
There is a vision. There is actually a statement in the code itself that you could take a look at to see whether or not that is something that you'd like to say for yourself. You don't have to adopt it, but the code is basically, the code actually provides a legal direction. It's a legal document, but in terms of your strategic plan or your strategy, you can develop whatever mission statement you so desire.
Tammy?
Can we put on the agenda for next time to talk about the idea of a retreat to set our vision, our goals and objectives?
Sure, we'll put that on the agenda. Seema?
Can we also put on the agenda next week about having volunteer opportunities? I've had some youth from the high school interested in working on cleaning up graffiti and or helping with art installations.
Sure, we'll put that on the agenda.
Whether the city
too.
has anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just a quick comment that I totally agree that a retreat is what we really needed. I don't know any way of doing that without doing it in person. I've done it a couple of times before in my life, and whiteboarding it and putting language up there from everybody's input and then forming something. It takes a long time, but I think it does deserve everybody's input on that. So 100% on doing a retreat somewhere to kind of put our vision together.
Great, thank you. So did anyone else have their hand up on that? Because we're at 8:31. I just want to respect everybody's time.
Yeah, one last thing that I would just throw out there for the agenda, and it doesn't have to be on the next agenda. It could be January or later. It's just an inventory, doing an inventory of what public arts we
Mhm.
currently have, just to know that, and which ones might need restoration or anything. So
Yeah, great. Thank you. Inventory of public art in Oregon City. All right, I've got all these down. I assume, and this is all recorded too, so you can go back and review the meeting notes. It'll be posted. So we will, if I'd like to make a motion to close the meeting. Well, I can't make them. Can I make the motion to
Oh.
close the meeting?
You
No.
can accept the motion. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Great, thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I motion that we adjourn the meeting.
I second.
Thank you. All in favor? Raise your hand. Seeing no objections. This meeting of the Oregon Arts Commission is done. Thank you so much for taking your time to figure out how we can support the arts community here in our lovely city. Thank you so much, and we'll see you all on December 16th.
Happy Thanksgiving.